Whoa! Woo, indeed. Hello, world. What's up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We're here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Our next guest is one of the hardest working, super crazy talented multi-hyphenates in all of existence. Best-selling author, amazing dancer, multi-award-winning electronic violinist. She does it all. Her new album, Artemis, drops tomorrow. Here to tell us all about it, back on the show, the always amazing, the great Lindsey Stirling is here, folks. How about that? I'm excited.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, thank you so much for coming back. And you, over the years, have been so generous. Every time you do something cool, you make it a point to come back and hang out with us for a little bit.
Because you guys are awesome. I thoroughly enjoy coming to AOL Build. I always make sure it's on the schedule when I come to do press in New York.
I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
I went back, I did the math. You are tied with one other person for most amount of visits. You want to know? Ethan Hawke.
Really?
Isn't that cool?
That is cool. Well,
How much fun is that? Yeah. It's not like SNL. We don't have like the 5 timers jacket or something. But
I was like, do I get a pin?
I would argue this is more prestigious.
I would say.
Thank you. You can keep the mug. That is yours now. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll take it.
How about that? 7-timer mug. But seriously, I'm so excited you're back. This record is fantastic. Artemis Eve, here we are tomorrow.
It is Artemis
How
Eve.
exciting. Are you excited right now? The fans are going to hear it. This has got to be the greatest point right here, right before the release.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel so excited. You know, and in the past, I've been like almost sick on this day because I get so nervous. But this time around, I'm genuinely, like, I've been through the stages of nerves and like doubting the project and being like, oh my gosh, is this terrible? Is it the best? I don't know. But now I'm just like, you know what? I can't touch it anymore. I'm really excited about what it is. It is what it is. And I'm just really excited to be able to share this little character and this whole story and this whole piece of work that's very concept driven with all of you guys, the world.
I'm really, yes, I'll
Thank you.
absolutely hold for that. Well, I'm excited to talk about the whole journey and how it came to be. Real quick, we just here in studio, we got a chance to see the video for Artemis, which was, it's gorgeous. It's super cool and badass. And the title track off the record. So much going on there. How long does a video like that take to plan and shoot and map out?
I mean, for a video like that in particular, like I had to learn the choreography with the dancers, which took several rehearsals to learn all of that. Secondly, getting permits. Like you can't just go to the Redwoods and shoot. You know, you learn all these things of like, well, that area's off limits. This one's on fire restriction, So there was a lot of planning that went into that. We started planning it about a month ahead of time. And then also post-production, it took me probably at least 30 hours to edit that. You know, I spent...
Really? And you have your hands in every part of the process still?
Yeah, so I'm a nerd. I love editing. And to me, and a lot of people are like, why don't you, delegate that now, at this phase? And I'm like, well, I definitely could. But I love it.
You like doing it. Yeah.
It's a part of the process that I'm like, why would I give away one of the things that I love the most? And I love that part. So anyway, I still edit my own videos, and it took me about 30 hours to edit that one.
Let me ask you, one of the hardest parts of being in that position, of being in charge of it, is you have to be the one to say that it's done. Yeah. You're cutting it together. And you just said with this record, and this time around, you've released it, you're okay with it, you're not nervous. What about with other creative endeavors? Is that hard for you to do typically? To be like, this is finished. I got to give it over to the fans now. Is that a hard thing?
Always. And I really think that's why it's important to set deadlines because, it comes to that, like, I always reach a point in the album or a project where I think, okay, I feel confident that I can finish it by this time comfortably. So we'll set a deadline. Not only is it a deadline, there's a tour that follows that, which so it's like if you cancel that deadline, there's repercussions. It's a ripple effect that becomes very, very there's consequences now. Yeah. And so, but then there's like the next phase where all of a sudden you start to question things and you start to think this isn't good enough. Like it went from being the greatest stuff I've ever written to suddenly the worst stuff I've ever written and it all happened just in here. And so I'm very grateful for deadlines because they kind of hold you to your commitment of like, no, I felt good about this. I have to trust that gut that once upon a time I felt really good about this. And now that I'm starting to doubt it, I got to trust the instincts of the Lindsey that was a little clearer and wasn't lost in the middle of it. So you got to trust the different stages of yourself when you start to doubt yourself.
Yeah. It's definitely a hard part when you get in the middle of a project, when you're not necessarily close to being finished, but you're pretty far from this. You're right smack dab. You get in the weeds, and that's when it starts to become difficult to make decisions because you've been looking at this one thing for so long. You have no idea. I've been listening to this one track for months. I don't know if it's there or not. Do you have people that you turn to, like that you trusted eyes, trusted ears, that you get ask for input and feedback?
I mean, definitely my team. I have the most amazing management team at Friends at Work, and you know, I have these people that have worked with me for years through all my albums, and so I really trust that they understand who I am as an artist. But I honestly think my favorite person to turn to is my mom. Like, I love my mom's opinion. She's honest with me, you know, and she'll tell me when stuff isn't her favorite. She'll be like, it's not my favorite, Linz, you know, like, and she'll be honest with me, you know, like at a show, like, that wasn't your best performance. And because she's kind and honest with me all the time, when she is like, this is great, you know, I trust that and I love that.
What's the harshest mom feedback you've ever gotten? What's like been the toughest pill to swallow?
You know, this is probably an answer you wouldn't expect, but I have very specific standards I like to live by in terms of like modesty and like respecting like myself, the way I've chosen to respect myself. And it comes partially from my faith and, you know, certain things like that. And that's a really hard line to hold as an artist when, you know, it's like, well, I'm a dancer. You know, so sometimes certain kinds of clothing are appropriate for different things. And, you know, I'm just trying to make the best judgment calls I can. And sometimes I've realized I pushed the line a little bit too far. And, you know, and sometimes fans have called me out for it. And then, you know, and I remember asking my mom, like, was that inappropriate? And she goes, you know, it was, you know, it probably wasn't the best. Like, you could have made much better choices. You know, and it, like, that hurts when it comes from my mom. But at the same time, I appreciate that because it's not like I'm trying to be mommy's little girl still. These are standards that I have chosen that I want to keep. And it's sometimes you have to reset that line and be like, yeah, it's strayed, but this is where I want to be. So we're going to move it again.
It's also hard whenever you feel like even if in the slightest bit you've let your mom down.
Yes,
it's like that's
let mom down.
In the world.
Dang it.
That gorgeous video, this record, Artemis, obviously inspired by the character of the Greek mythology, Artemis. How did you come to know Artemis' story? Why did you feel connected? Did you know that you were going to do this for a while? Did it all kind of happen suddenly? Tell me like the origin story of all this.
It built kind of piece by piece. First of all, I was writing the whole album from a very specific vantage point of where I'm at now. That's where I always start with my albums. Like, I have to do this inner search of where am I at emotionally and what kind of chapter is this? And it's really interesting because my last album was written all about loss. Brave Enough is about being brave enough to continue after you've lost people, the most important people in your life. And it was my best friend and my dad passed away. And so I drew from a lot of hard emotions. And then I went out on stage every night and experienced these hard emotions every night, which was very cathartic and good for me, but also it was hard. Yeah. And it took a really long time for me to come out of the depression that loss caused me. And the grief was so powerful. And I had kind of come to accept that, like, I think this is the new Lindsey. This is the new version of myself, and I think that the old Lindsey has like kind of died with them. That kind of fun-spirited, like, I was like, it made me really sad to think that I think she's gone. And I was trying to get used to the new me. And then about a year ago, it was right about the time I was starting to get ready to write a new album, I felt myself like fully come back. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's not that she was gone or doesn't exist anymore. She was just covered up by grief. Yeah. And I had to give her time and I had to work on myself so that I could come back. And so it was actually, that song was the first song, Artemis.
Was that the first one?
That was the first song that I wrote that, you know, I'd written a lot of songs, but that was the one where it was like, I still got it. This is the sound. This is the album I want to write. And I called the song Artemis because I was searching for words and themes that meant bringer of light. And I loved that Artemis is the goddess of the moon, and she brings light to darkness. And I think that's a really powerful metaphor that even in dark times of our life, when we are going through grief or depression or whatever it is, that we can still find hope. We can still find light even amidst the darkness. And even more powerfully, I love that the moon goes in cycles. And if you think about Artemis being this goddess of the moon, and that she, in the story that I've developed, she fights against Nyx, the goddess of the night, who's trying to consume the world in darkness. And Artemis continuously is in this ever-going battle against the night, where the night covers her up by shadow, and then she fights to show her light again. And I was like, that was like me. And, you know, sometimes you might look into the sky, and the moon is in a phase where it's covered in shadow, and you'd think it doesn't exist anymore if you didn't know better. You'd think like you'd be like, I don't see a moon. Probably isn't. It probably left.
We don't have a moon anymore.
Went to another planet. Yeah, right. We're in 2019, but no, it's not that it's not there. It's just that it's covered in shadow, and I think that's a really powerful metaphor for me and for anyone that. The moon can remind you that you are still powerful. Whatever phase of your life you're in, you are still strong, you're still vibrant, you're still full of power and hope and dreams. It's just sometimes you have to accept that right now we're a little covered in shadow. I'm going to feel it, and then I'm going to fight for my light again.
Wow. That's amazing. How much of that, because the whole record and everything is inspired and kind of tells the story. How much of that story do you have to, I guess the whole thing, you have to write it out, you have to have it all mapped out, and then how do you find where the music exists within that story? I want to tell this, I want to tell that. How do you figure that out?
Well, I was really, it was fun as we started to develop Artemis, the song more, it started as a demo, and then I really went in once I knew it was called Artemis, and I was like, this part I want it to sound like The Hunt, and that's why the violins are very rhythmic, and then the ethereal voice, I was like, I want that to sound like Virtue and the moon, and so that's all represented in that song, and then different songs on the album represent, darkness, and different ones represent coming to light, and I would tell the producers, I need a song today that's like light, and or this one needs to be like The Shift. But also I was writing a comic book in tandem. I was so inspired by the story of what Artemis is, what she represents. So I was like, this is my comic book. I've wanted to write one for years and I've just been waiting for the right story. And so as I was writing the story, the music was inspiring the story, but also the story was inspiring the music. So Underground was inspired by the world that this character lives in, where she's at the very lowest level of this kind of caste system in their society. And they live underground in what's called the trenches, and they live amongst the machinery and the workings that keeps the world running. And so they're in these trenches. And so I called the song Underground, and it represents her struggle of feeling trapped in a world where she's actually never even seen the sky. So anyways, that the two kind of fed each other, the comic book and the music.
You're writing the comic book. You're writing the music for this. Were you touring during all this as well, or were you?
I was not.
I'm trying to gauge of how much you were doing at once and how much you were putting out into the world at one time. Okay, so you were just working on these things, which is thank heavens. Okay.
I know. Well, some people
As
are
a concerned fan. I'm happy to hear that.
I do wear a lot of hats, but for me, one thing I can't really juggle is writing, because it's probably, to be honest, the most the hardest part for me, the process. I have to really be nope, right now I am going to write. And I need inspiration, and I need to be home, and I need to be locked in a studio.
What comes first? Do you guys create an amazing, or I guess it could be anything, but do you start with a beat? Do you start with a line on the violin? Do you start with an idea? Where does the seedling come from of a song?
The seedling usually comes from whatever I tell the producer. Sometimes I have a specific story or a specific music video or a character, which was really fun to write through characters in this one, and events of the comic book. And be this one needs to represent being trapped underground. And so that's where it starts. But then we'll start with pads and sounds. I mean, sounds do so much for me. It's all about the texture. And from the textures we start developing chords. Because I don't know, I don't think I've ever written a melody before everything else. Usually the melody is always inspired by the textures of I'm ooh, I need something more mysterious sounding. And then it inspires a melody.
Very, very cool. This is, I want to say, 5th record, right?
This is my 5th album, baby.
Hold for applause. 5th record.
5th album. I can't believe that.
Are there, when you go into the studio, when you go to talk to the producer, are there certain tricks that you like to lean on, or were you looking to mix things up? I remember reading somewhere that one of the exciting things was you were kind of breaking a lot of rules that you sort of had to follow or been working on over the past couple of years. So I'm curious, how much of that did you explore on this record, and how many rules you were breaking?
Yeah, well, I think I wanted to go back to the Lindsey that wrote her first album, because that Lindsey didn't understand the rules. I had never written music before. I just went in and was like, this sounds good. Yeah. This feels good to me. Since then, I learned a lot about song structure, and I learned a lot about how to write a hit, and I learned a lot about radio and what plays and what sells. And these are all good things to know. I'm not saying they're bad, but I wanted to just get the freedom to not live by the rules. And so every single song on this album was written as an instrumental, and it just stemmed from sounds and melodies. And, one of my favorite songs on the album is the one with Amy Lee on it.
Yeah.
I love Amy.
You hold for Amy.
Yes. I mean, I'm such a fan. I've been a fan forever of Amy, ever since their first album. And so, one, it's so exciting to not only have been on their album, now we've toured together. Now, she's my friend.
How crazy is
like,
that?
Amy Lee is my friend, you know? But it was cool to be able to, like, call her up and be like, hey, I have a song that's, you know, it's an instrumental right now, but would you want to write on it? And it's really interesting because it does not follow a song structure at all that makes sense, but it makes sense for the song. It starts out as an instrumental, and then her voice comes in with these like epic sounding like, oh, you know, that just like grows. And then it's not till halfway through the song that you hear a single word. Yeah. And then there's lyrics. And so, but you know, it sounds very strange, but when you listen to the song, it's like, yeah, it's just growing. It makes sense. And it was really fun to not have to follow the rules of like, no, that's not how a song is.
Chorus, bridge.
Yeah, you have a chorus, a bridge, you have a breakdown, and you know, I don't know. So it was really exciting to do that.
What was it like the first time when you first heard her vocals on your track?
Oh my gosh, I can't even describe to you. I got chills all over my body, and at the same time, I had the biggest smile on my face because her voice is so iconic and so recognizable, and it was just like, that's one of the main people that inspired me to want to share music is Amy Lee, and now here she's on my album.
How did you know that was the one you wanted her to sing on?
Well, it was, like I said, all these songs were written as instrumentals first, and that was one that just needed more.
It needed more.
Like there was extra space in the song, and I thought like I could write more violin melodies. Or I was like, this song wants something special. It needs something more. And that was the same with the Elle King song. It was an instrumental. We even released it as an instrumental as well. We had both versions on the album. But I was like, this song could use something more. It can stand as an instrumental, but what would it be like if we had lyrics on this one? Like sometimes songs want to be certain things and you just gotta let them be. It's like teenagers.
You gotta listen to the song. The song will tell you.
Yeah, it's a very hippie attitude. Let the song tell you what it wants to be.
How about bringing these songs to the stage after going through such an emotionally intense tour with Brave Enough and processing all of that? What's it been like bringing all these high energy songs and all these incredible sounds and textures and then putting dance to that and bringing all that to a live performance? Has that been a very fun part of the process for you?
So fun.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I said, the songwriting stage is probably the hardest and the one I question the most. Building a show, making music videos, like getting these songs ready to like meet the world in that way, to me is so natural. It's the way that I think. It's the way that like I feel like I was born to do things. I love to creative direct. And so it's been so fun to like go through rehearsals and work with my dancers and work with choreographers. And, for example, the Artemis video, that was originally tour choreography, but I had told the choreographer, I was like, I want this to be like we're going into battle as archers and like they're my warrior women. And then after we learned it for tour, I was like, this is way too cool. I have to put this in the video. Because it was originally just going to be me in the redwoods. And then I asked my girls, like, you guys want to go on a road trip into the woods? Bring your camping gear?
So cool. We're going to go to audience Q&A in just a second, but I wanted to ask, obviously a lot of people remember very early days on AGT, and I don't know if you still keep up or not, but there's an amazing young violinist who's Tyler, I wrote his name down so I get it right because I saw Tyler Butler Figueroa, who just made it to the finals last night.
I know, I've been following.
So you have been watching.
Yeah.
I always wonder when you see, because there was another amazing violinist last year, and it's like you get like a little warmth, like you kind of blazed a trail in a way and sort of made it known that this was a thing that you could play violin and be cool and you can move around and put on a show, and you were one of the first people to do that at such a big scale and be so entertaining doing it. What is it like to see young people coming up and following in those footsteps?
I mean, I don't know if I was like the trailblazer for it, but it is really exciting to be like, I don't know, finding opportunities for people to feel comfortable taking the violin and whatever it is they do, like into places where maybe it might not have been thought of before to do it like that. And the freedom that comes with that, is really exciting. Because I remember when I was a young violinist, like there wasn't any music aside from classical to play. And I remember just craving something else and craving the ability to like play the violin with something that maybe I would want to listen to, Like, what do I like to listen to? Well, it was dubstep at the time, and it was really a mind-breaking experience when I was like, duh, why have I never written the kind of music that I like? let's try this out. And, you know, so it's really exciting to see that being more readily available, and, you know, and to see someone like Tyler thriving on AGT. And it just makes me so excited. I've tweeted at him a couple times, wished him luck.
Very, very cool. All right, so the record is tomorrow. Tour dates, people should go where to get tickets for tours?
LindseyStirling.com.
Of course.
We are starting in Europe. We leave. So I'll be heading over to Europe like this weekend. But we will be back. We'll be doing a Christmas tour in the fall. So I love Christmas. So we'll be doing a Christmas tour in the fall, and tickets on my website soon. And then we'll come back to the States with the full Artemis tour early summer. So
Awesome.
yeah,
All right,
can't
so
wait.
record tomorrow, tour, keep an eye out, you're coming back. For those watching at home, if you didn't catch the video, head over and watch it because it's incredible. And now I've left enough time for the wonderful fan questions. I love these. Here we go. The first one's coming to us from Twitter, somebody watching live right now. J Hayes 88, great name, said, dancing and playing violin simultaneously. How does each creative outlet affect the other in your art? Do you ever write violin pieces to choreography you want to do?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I will say from the very first time I started writing music, I didn't have specific choreography in mind, but movement and the inspiration of movement has always been very important to me in writing and thinking, could I move to this? Would I feel comfortable dancing to this? Does it make me want to move and to express myself? And that's always, if a piece doesn't, it doesn't make the album. And I will say they are such different creative outlets, and it's interesting because I work with choreographers who they listen to music a very different way than I would. They're hearing the beats and the rhythms, and that's usually where they make the choreography to, and they don't think about the fact that the violin plays a very different rhythm. And so my feet and body do a very different rhythm than my hands and arms. So it's two very different things that take a while to get them to lock in, but once they lock, it becomes like a giant muscle memory. It's just really awkward until it locks.
It always it's way more visually impressive, but it reminded me of the same kind of skill set of singing and playing an instrument at the same time, where you would play in a different time signature, then try to sing over it or something.
Which I cannot do.
Really?
Yeah, I can dance and play, which is its own thing, but I cannot sing and play. I've tried before. I mean, I would have to, maybe if I practiced a ton, but I don't know how people do that.
That's fascinating to me. I would imagine you'd be amazing at it.
You would think.
I clearly don't know anything.
One multitasking skill you realize has nothing to, it's just these fine-tuned, these rhythms. I've gotten so good at doing that, but then comes to patting my head and, my stomach, and I'm like, what?
Doesn't work. So cool. That was a great question. We have more in the room. I have at least 3. Let's go. I got a microphone. We're going to start right here. Go for it.
Hi.
Hi.
You're awesome, by the way.
Is that a Hailstorm shirt?
Yeah.
Yes, Lizzie Hale's my girl.
She's amazing. I know that you've done a bunch of amazing collaborations with artists like Lizzie Hale to John Legend. What is the most rewarding about these experiences?
That is a great question. It's so interesting how every artist works so differently and expresses themselves so differently. And it's always really fun to see even what comes out of you when you're working with a different person. And it's like relationships bring out different sides of you. And it's the same in an artistic relationship. Together, you'll create a little song baby that you never would have done on your own. And sometimes you find little pieces of I didn't know I had that artistic style in me, but Lizzie Hale helped pull it out of me. And, suddenly I was like a rocker. And so it's really fun to work with other people, and you discover different artistic sides of yourself that you might not have known you had. And also you might not have known that you really liked about yourself.
Thank you.
That's a great question. We've got a couple more. Next question is coming from, who's got the microphone? Right there. Oh, perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to say Artemis is an amazing goddess to choose.
Oh, thank you.
The new moon is new beginnings.
Yes.
So I really love that theme. And I
Thank
wanted
you.
to know what made you think of using anime as as the album art?
Yes. I've always loved anime. I didn't really even grow up knowing what anime was, so it's not like my childhood I watched anime films, but when I started to create myself, I would wander through the internet and Pinterest boards and all kinds of things searching for inspiration, and I would make these folders of anime art because I thought it was so beautiful and so inspiring. And a lot of my costuming in the past and like even my style is very inspired by anime. I didn't realize it until like a while later that, oh, that's what I love. And so I've wanted to make a comic book for a while now, and it just felt very natural to me that I didn't want to do a Western style comic. I wanted to do an anime, a manga style, which proved to be really, really difficult to find over here. So my artist is actually, this artist who did this is from Finland, and then the artist who did the interior of the comic book I found through Instagram, through hashtagging anime, and he actually lives in Japan. So it's been a very interesting process.
What a cool process.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What was it like when you opened your book and you saw your drawings come to life for the first time? That must have been a pretty cool moment.
Well, so the book isn't quite done yet because of the challenges of finding an artist. We got a little bit behind, but it's been so fun. I've been working hand in hand with them and watching the the art pieces come in, and I can't. I just actually opened my album for the first time backstage, and like getting to see it physically and just be like, oh my gosh, I've only seen it, in this form, but to hold, and I don't know. There's something so magical about feeling a product that's real in a world where so many things are digital, and we get very used to that. But when you hold something, you're like, and you can feel it. It's like, wow.
Yeah. You talk a lot about deadlines. When do you hope to have that book done by?
Right? I know. I've never missed a deadline ever. I'm like so disappointed in myself, but I really did everything I could to get it out. But anyways, it's going to be out mid-September.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, let's hope Ethan Hawke doesn't do anything between now and then. You could pull ahead. You'll be number 8. That'll be it. We've got time for one more question. It's over here. Go for it.
Hi, Lindsey. I was wondering what creative habits or rituals you partake in to channel originality and self-expression.
Yeah. I found something that's probably very unexpected that I have found for myself is reading. And I'm dyslexic, so I actually hate reading, but I do audiobooks. And I find, because like I said, at the beginning of any creative process, I have to first see where I'm at. And sometimes you don't honestly know where you're at. And I find by reading books, like my whole Brave Enough album was inspired by Brene Brown's series of books. I read all of them as I was writing the album, and it really helped me discover where I'm at. I listened to podcasts like The School of Greatness, and I love listening to great thinkers and people who help you understand your mind and better your mind and positive thinking and all of these kinds of just I guess, what do you call it? Self-help? That's my hobby, I guess, is self-help. But I find that stuff fascinating, and it helps me ground myself so that I can stop judging what I'm doing and just do it.
Another great question. We got to wrap things up and get in the signal, but I'll remind everybody, Artemis is available everywhere tomorrow. Keep an eye, lindseystirling.com for tour dates and tickets. You're heading to Europe, and then you're coming back. That book is coming sometime soon before Ethan Hawke finishes his next thing. And I think that's it. Did we cover everything you got going on right now? I'm sure you got more in the...
So.
Thank you, everybody, for being an awesome audience. As always, great questions. Thanks for hanging out with us, and thanks to those tuning in live. And while we're thanking people, everybody make a ridiculous amount of noise. Join me in thanking Lindsey Stirling for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Don't forget your mug.
My mug.